New Jersey, 2003. The quiet streets of Cranford had been rattled one late summer evening when 12-year-old Emily Sanders vanished without a trace. Her mother, Linda Sanders, had just finished putting away dishes after dinner when she realized Emily wasn't in her room. Panic set in immediately. Linda called out her daughter's name, checked the backyard, the nearby park, and even the neighbor's yard. But there was no sign of Emily. The only clue was her bicycle, leaning against the fence in the backyard. Wheels still warm from her evening ride, the local police responded quickly. Officers scoured the neighborhood, interviewing neighbors, friends, and anyone who might have seen Emily in the critical hours after she disappeared. Flyers went up across Cranford and surrounding towns, Newark, Elizabeth, Union, even into parts of Essex County. The community organized search parties, combing wooded areas and nearby train tracks. Everyone wanted to find Emily. Yet, despite the frantic efforts, the case went cold. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. Linda and her husband, Robert Sanders, were left in a state of unending anguish. They followed every lead, no matter how small or improbable. Robert would spend his mornings retracing Emily's usual walking routes, checking abandoned lots, playgrounds, and even the parking areas behind local stores. Afternoons were filled with calls to tip lines, meetings with volunteers, and coordination with local police. Evenings were dedicated to cataloging every lead in meticulously organized binders. Linda, meanwhile, tried to maintain the household, balancing grief with the demands of raising Emily's younger brother, Jacob, who was only 8 at the time of her disappearance. For Robert, the search became an all-consuming mission. He rarely slept more than 4 hours a night, often found at the kitchen table late into the early morning, scanning maps and making notes on areas he planned to revisit. He taught himself to think like a detective, Linda recalled years later, because he believed the police had done everything they could, but he couldn't give up. His dedication took a toll. By 2008, Robert's hair had turned completely grey, and by 2010 he had developed a heart condition attributed to the constant stress. But still, he continued. Every clue, every tip, every unanswered call was another reason not to stop. Meanwhile, Linda found solace in faith. A devout Catholic, she attended Mass daily, lighting candles for Emily and spending hours in prayer. Every evening, she would set Emily's place at the dinner table, a silent act of hope, and sit by the front window until late into the night, imagining her daughter walking through the door. Her world gradually shrank to the boundaries of their home. Well-meaning friends suggested memorial services or other forms of closure, but Linda politely refused. She couldn't accept the idea that Emily was gone forever. Jacob, growing up in the shadow of Emily's disappearance, struggled in silence. School was difficult. Classmates were unsure how to approach him, and teachers alternated between leniency and intrusive questions. Jacob coped by retreating into his studies and hobbies, finding stability in routine and small successes. The absence of his sister was a constant reminder, a weight he carried silently. Despite the passage of years, the Sanders family refused to surrender hope. Every summer, search parties were organized anew, and every anniversary of Emily's disappearance brought renewed attention. Local media outlets ran stories, and occasionally, tips surfaced that warranted police follow-up, though none produced results for nearly 2 decades. The original investigation in 2003 had been thorough for its time, but limited by the technology available. Witnesses remembered only fragmented details, and physical evidence was scarce. A strand of hair found near Emily's bicycle path, once thought irrelevant, was stored in evidence. A single set of tire tracks in a nearby dirt lot remained unexplained. Investigators suspected abduction, but had no leads on a suspect. Howard Reynolds, a man who lived nearby, was briefly questioned after neighbors reported seeing him near the park the evening Emily disappeared. But he provided an alibi corroborated by his wife. Without additional evidence, he was released, and the case went cold. It wasn't until 2023, 20 years later, that the breakthrough came. The New Jersey State Police had established a cold case unit equipped with the latest forensic technology, including advanced DNA analysis and genealogy tools. Detective Sarah Palmer, assigned to review long unsolved cases, noticed the strand of hair collected from the dirt lot near Emily's bicycle path had never been tested with modern techniques. Using mitochondrial DNA analysis, the hair provided a partial genetic profile. The team uploaded the profile into a national genealogy database, a resource unavailable in 2003. Within weeks, a distant relative matched the profile, pointing investigators toward a new person of interest. The suspect was identified as Daniel Mercer, a 48-year-old man who had lived in Cranford at the time of Emily's disappearance. Mercer had moved frequently over the years, but had returned to New Jersey in 2018, blending quietly into the community. He had never been a person of interest in the original investigation, and neighbors described him as polite but reserved, the kind of person you might barely notice. He worked in construction and had no criminal record significant enough to draw attention. Detective Palmer and her team proceeded with caution, building a comprehensive timeline of Mercer's movements in 2003. They discovered that he had worked near the park where Emily was last seen and had the opportunity to encounter her during her evening walk. Further DNA samples collected under a court order from Mercer confirmed the match, linking him definitively to the strand of hair. Investigators also revisited witness reports from 2003, uncovering minor inconsistencies in his original statements. When combined with the DNA evidence, it created a compelling case for prosecution. In September 2023, Daniel Mercer was arrested in Cranford. The news sent shockwaves through the community. People who had known Mercer for years were stunned. How could someone living among them for decades harbor such a dark secret? Local media outlets reported extensively on the arrest, interviewing family members, neighbors, and law enforcement officials. The Sanders family released a statement expressing relief that justice was finally within reach, tempered by the sorrow of having waited 20 years for answers. The trial began in early 2024. Mercer's defense attempted to challenge the DNA evidence, arguing contamination and improper handling of the original samples. However, forensic experts testified to the rigorous chain of custody and the advancements in DNA technology that allowed for a reliable match. Former detectives from the 2003 investigation also provided context, explaining how investigative limitations at the time had prevented the case from progressing. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Daniel Mercer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the Sanders family, the conviction brought a complex mix of emotions. Relief, grief, and closure all came together in ways that were both overwhelming and cathartic. Linda finally allowed herself to let go of certain rituals, such as setting Emily's place at the dinner table, though she kept photographs and mementos of her daughter. Robert, whose health had deteriorated over the years from stress, expressed gratitude for the relentless work of law enforcement and the persistence of the cold case unit that ultimately brought justice. Jacob, now in his late 20s, found peace in knowing the truth and in the accountability of the perpetrator. The impact of the case extended beyond the Sanders family. The Cranford Police Department implemented permanent cold case review protocols, ensuring that unsolved cases were periodically revisited with the latest forensic tools. Local schools used the case as an example in safety education programs, emphasizing community awareness and the importance of reporting suspicious activity. The Sanders family also established a foundation in Emily's name, providing scholarships for students pursuing careers in forensic science, criminal justice, and advocacy for missing children. Looking back, the New Jersey 2003 cold case highlights the interplay of human persistence and technological advancement. Without the decades-long commitment of Emily's family and the willingness of law enforcement to revisit unsolved cases, the truth might never have emerged. It demonstrates how modern forensic techniques, combined with genealogical tools, can finally bring answers to families left in the dark for years. The community of Cranford, once haunted by uncertainty and fear, now experiences a sense of closure. While the emotional scars remain, there is a renewed faith in the power of justice and in the resilience of families who refuse to give up. The story of Emily Sanders serves as a reminder that even after 20 years, the pursuit of truth is never in vain. Every tip, every lead, and every act of persistence contributes to the eventual resolution. The Sanders family continues to honor Emily's memory through advocacy, public speaking, and the work of their foundation. They regularly connect with other families facing long-term uncertainty, offering guidance, support, and hope. Emily's story, once defined by mystery and sorrow, has transformed into a legacy of action, community engagement, and systemic improvement, proving that justice may be delayed, but can never truly be denied. Even after Daniel Mercer's arrest, the road to full closure for the Sanders family was far from over. Court proceedings dragged on for months, complicated by the meticulous presentation required for a case relying heavily on forensic evidence and historical records. Detective Sarah Palmer remained a constant presence for the family, providing updates and explaining legal procedures in detail. Her calm demeanor and thorough explanations gave Linda and Robert some measure of reassurance amidst the emotional turbulence. The media descended on Cranford like a storm, eager to document the decades-long case, now reaching its climax. Reporters interviewed neighbors, friends, and former investigators. Many residents were forced to confront memories they had tried to bury. The night Emily disappeared, the fear that had lingered over the community for years, and the reality that someone they had known could commit such a crime. Some were racked with guilt for having failed to notice the signs, even though, in truth, Mercer had been careful to hide any evidence of his crime. The courtroom became the center of intense scrutiny. Testimonies from forensic experts were detailed and technical, yet the narrative of Emily's final moments remained painfully human. Experts explained how the DNA from the hair strand had been preserved against the odds, surviving 2 decades to finally point to Mercer. Witness statements from 2003 were revisited, some containing subtle clues that, in hindsight, suggested Mercer's potential involvement. Linda and Robert listened with quiet intensity, their emotions a mixture of sorrow, hope, and determination. Jacob, now 28, took careful notes, wanting to understand every facet of the case that had overshadowed his childhood. During the trial, it emerged that Mercer had moved from Cranford in 2005, taking a job in Pennsylvania before returning to New Jersey years later. Investigation of his movements and activities during those intervening years revealed no additional crimes, but investigators believed his careful, calculated nature had allowed him to evade detection for so long. Mercer's home, when searched under court order, yielded no physical evidence of the crime. Every incriminating detail rested on the DNA, genealogical data, and historical inconsistencies in his statements. The prosecution painted a portrait of Mercer as methodical and deliberate. They emphasized his proximity to the park, the timing of Emily's disappearance, and the unmistakable DNA match that linked him to the crime. The jury was shown maps, timelines, and photographs, including Emily's bicycle, her favorite books, and letters she had written that were kept by her parents. These items humanized the victim, ensuring the jury understood the magnitude of the loss. Defense attorneys argued that Mercer's life over the past 20 years demonstrated rehabilitation, portraying him as a law-abiding citizen who had contributed quietly to his community. They suggested that the delay in evidence collection and the reliance on modern DNA techniques introduced enough uncertainty to question his guilt. Mercer himself remained silent throughout the proceedings. He rarely made eye contact, and when asked to provide statements or testimony, he refused. Despite the defense's strategy, the weight of evidence was overwhelming. Forensic experts explained the unprecedented accuracy of DNA analysis when combined with genealogical research. They outlined how even minor genetic markers, preserved over decades, could definitively establish a match. Witnesses corroborated key details about Mercer's behavior in 2003, painting a picture of someone with opportunity and motive. Even if motive remained elusive in the traditional sense, one of the most emotionally charged moments in the trial came when Detective Palmer recounted the painstaking process of identifying Mercer. She described the hundreds of hours spent reviewing cold case files, analyzing old evidence, and consulting with forensic genealogists. "This case is a testament to perseverance," she told the court. "Emily's family never stopped hoping, and we never stopped searching for the truth. Today we present evidence that tells the story her disappearance left incomplete for 20 years." Family members sitting in the courtroom were visibly moved. Linda clutched a photograph of Emily, tracing her daughter's face with a trembling hand. Robert, frail from years of stress, adjusted his oxygen mask, staring at the defendant with a mixture of pain and quiet resolve. Jacob sat beside his mother, his expression taut but attentive, absorbing the narrative that had defined his family's lives for so long. Outside the courthouse, the community grappled with mixed emotions. Relief that justice might finally be served mingled with sorrow and disbelief. Local parents spoke of renewed vigilance, sharing stories about how Emily's disappearance had shaped their own parenting decisions. Neighbors reflected on the warning signs they might have overlooked, realizing that the ordinary facade Mercer presented had concealed a horrific truth. The trial's conclusion approached rapidly. In March 2024, after weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only a single day. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mixture of relief and tears. Linda collapsed into Robert's arms, finally allowing herself to cry openly after 21 years of restrained grief. Jacob sat silently, letting the weight of the verdict sink in. The Sanders family's long nightmare was at last approaching a resolution. Sentencing followed in April 2024. Mercer, now 69, faced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Judge Marianne Collins spoke directly to the defendant. "Mr. Mercer, the passage of time does not diminish the magnitude of your crimes. A child's life, her potential, her future was stolen from this world. Justice delayed cannot be denied. You will spend the remainder of your days accountable for the harm you have caused." Mercer remained impassive, offering no words of apology or explanation. For the Sanders family, the conviction marked the beginning of a new chapter. Linda and Robert began the difficult work of releasing some of the rituals that had kept them tethered to the hope of Emily's return. The photograph of Emily that had accompanied them everywhere was placed in a memory corner, alongside mementos of her life and favorite belongings. Jacob, though still grieving, found strength in knowing the truth and in the community's acknowledgement of the years of pain they endured. The impact of the case extended beyond the immediate family. Cranford and surrounding towns implemented improved procedures for missing children investigations, including the establishment of permanent cold case review units. Local law enforcement officers were trained in the use of modern DNA and genealogical research techniques. Schools added safety education programs, teaching students about situational awareness, stranger danger, and the importance of speaking up if something seemed wrong. The Sanders family also established the Emily Sanders Foundation, dedicated to supporting missing children cases and cold case investigations across New Jersey. The foundation provides grants for advanced forensic testing, investigative training, and community awareness programs. Each year, the foundation organizes a remembrance event in Emily's honor. bringing together families, law enforcement, and volunteers who have dedicated their lives to seeking justice for children. Reflecting on the case, Detective Palmer emphasized the lessons learned from Emily's disappearance. "This story is about persistence, hope, and the relentless pursuit of justice," she said. "Even after decades, the truth can come to light. Families like the Sanders deserve answers, no matter how much time has passed." The community of Cranford, once haunted by fear and uncertainty, gradually found a sense of closure. Neighbors who had lived in the town for decades shared stories about how Emily's disappearance had shaped their own lives, teaching them vigilance, empathy, and the value of community engagement. Parents spoke openly about the need to watch over children while fostering independence, balancing protection with trust. 21 years after Emily Sanders disappeared, the Sanders family found a measure of peace. While the pain of losing a child never fully disappears, the knowledge that the person responsible had been held accountable provided a tangible form of closure. Their story stands as a testament to the enduring power of hope, the importance of persistence, and the ability of modern technology to finally resolve long-standing mysteries. Today, the Emily Sanders case is studied by law enforcement agencies across the country as an example of how cold cases can be solved through the integration of old evidence, modern forensic methods, and genealogical research. It serves as a guide for detectives, highlighting both investigative challenges and the strategies that can ultimately lead to justice. For the Sanders family, Emily's memory continues to inspire action, advocacy, and education. They speak publicly about the importance of never giving up, of keeping hope alive even when the world seems indifferent. Emily's story, once defined by tragedy and uncertainty, has become a source of strength, teaching a community, a state, and a nation that justice, no matter how delayed, is always worth pursuing. The months following Mercer's conviction were a strange combination of relief and emptiness for the Sanders family. The sense of fear and uncertainty that had haunted their lives for more than 2 decades was gone, yet the absence of Emily remained a permanent presence in their home and hearts. Linda spent long hours in the quiet of her living room, looking at photographs of her daughter, remembering the small moments that had once filled their days. Birthdays, holidays, and even the simplest routines, all remembered in painful detail, were now frozen in memory. Robert, once a man full of stoic resilience, allowed himself more vulnerability. He would sit on the porch each evening, watching the sunset, reflecting on the years lost to unanswered questions and endless hope. "We didn't just lose Emily," he told a local reporter in June 2024. "We lost 21 years of what could have been, but we have to live with what we have and honor the life she did live, however short it was." His words carried the weight of a parent's grief, tempered by the relief that the person responsible had been brought to justice. Jacob, now fully immersed in his career as a data analyst in New York, found ways to channel his emotions into advocacy. He collaborated with organizations dedicated to missing children and cold case investigations, sharing insights from his family's experience. "Knowledge is power," he explained at a conference hosted by a national cold case task force. "If investigators know what works, if families know how to push for answers, we can prevent other cases from being left unresolved for decades." Community engagement became a focal point in Cranford. Residents who had watched the Sanders family suffer over the years were inspired to take a more active role in local safety initiatives. Neighborhood watch programs were strengthened, and schools began incorporating workshops on missing persons, stranger awareness, and the importance of reporting suspicious activity. Many parents who had once felt powerless now felt empowered, using Emily's story as both a cautionary tale and a source of hope. The Emily Sanders Foundation grew rapidly, providing funding for new forensic technology, training programs, and public awareness campaigns. The foundation also worked closely with law enforcement to create an accessible database for unsolved cases, ensuring that historical evidence was preserved and revisited with modern techniques. Each year, the Foundation held a memorial event on the anniversary of Emily's disappearance, honoring her memory and highlighting the importance of community vigilance and perseverance in cold case investigations. Detective Palmer continued to play an essential role in these initiatives. Her work on the Sanders case became a model for other investigations, demonstrating the effectiveness of combining meticulous review of old evidence with modern DNA and genealogical research. The key is never assuming a case is too old to solve, she explained in a law enforcement journal. With every technological advancement, what once seemed impossible becomes achievable. Persistence, accuracy, and compassion are the pillars of every cold case investigation. The psychological impact on the Sanders family could not be understated. Linda and Robert both sought counseling to navigate the complex emotions that arose after the trial. Therapy helped them process decades of fear, hope, and grief, providing tools to rebuild their lives. For Jacob, therapy offered a space to reconcile his childhood memories with the reality of the trial and its aftermath. He could finally reflect on the experience with some clarity, understanding the enormity of the family's ordeal, while also recognizing his own growth and resilience. For Cranford, Mercer's conviction marked a turning point in the community's collective consciousness. The town, once defined by fear and uncertainty, began to rebuild trust among residents.